Hey guys, Paul Elam here with an ear from men. In the most recent fit of moral panic over unruly men, the Daily Mail's Cindy Tran reports that an Australia-based private Facebook group, Blokes Advice, now some 200,000 members strong, is a white-hot cauldron of hatred for women. Armed with a collection of screenshots and bushels of righteous indignation, Tran both reports on and makes personal commentary about what she calls sickening, extreme, misogynistic, degrading, and vile displays of advocacy for rape, revenge porn, and domestic violence. After draining herself of adjectives to describe how awful the group of blokes really is, she mentions another Facebook page, Red Hearts Campaign, another one of Australia's seemingly endless stream of women-only advocacy groups. Red Hearts Campaign, possibly an aspiring version of the very lucrative White Ribbon Campaign, infiltrated Blokes Advice and launched a name and shame campaign on the members, ultimately getting the group shut down. I'm sure that'll do a lot of good. None of those guys will ever be able to talk on the internet again, unless it's someplace like SOCFREESPEECH.com, linked in the low bar, which won't be closed down due to a lack of spine in the management. At any rate, I read the complete article by Tran, which took all of 4 minutes because I'm a slow reader. After doing so, it leaves me with two things I need to say. One, yeah, there's some rank shit there. Definitely not the kind of conversation you would have in the presence of polite company. That is about all the indignation I can muster for this group and the men in it, which brings me to the second thing I have to say about it, to Cindy Tran, to Red Hearts Campaign, and to the dozens of hand-wringing commenters who flooded in to crow in disgust about Blokes Advice. And that is, what did you expect? I mean, seriously, what on earth did you ever expect? 50 years nonstop bashing men, demonizing them from cradle to grave, pushing them out of higher education and the workforce, then calling them underachieving losers, attacking their hobbies and interests like video gaming just because you can, smearing them all as potential rapists and treating false rape allegations like a joke, ignoring the gender suicide gap, moving fathers out of the family home like they were defective pieces of furniture, and raising 2 generations of women who look down their noses at men like we were the great unwashed. And you are now what? Shocked that there's a growing number of men who don't think much of women? Well, boo fucking who? Just what is it that Tran is expecting men to do? Get on the outrage wagon? Send themselves to the guilty corner to wear a dunce cap? Seek out the members of Blokes Advice and tell them to quit hating on women and start acting like real men? I think I have a better idea. How about, as men, we just shine it on and tell Miss Panties in a Twist to quit boring us with her petty first-world bellyaching? You know, I'll tell you what is shocking. It is shocking that Tran, the Red Hearts Campaign, and anyone else poised on high to clutch pearls and shriek like B-movie damsels didn't see it coming a long time ago. Abused, fatherless men end up in a lot worse places than private Facebook groups raging about women. The Facebook group is actually a pretty mild thing compared to what could be happening, like gangs and prison. I know, that doesn't sit very well with the terminally entitled princesses of our modern media who are perfectly willing to send moles into private groups to find things that offend and scare them. Not that I give a rat's ass what bothers those people. If it wasn't Blokes Advice, they would just find something else to wax victim about, because that is what they do. They'd rather tilt at windmills than figure out that if you put a dog in a corner long enough and kick it, it will eventually come out biting. If you disenfranchise and denigrate human beings, strip them of their role models and savage their dignity, they eventually will turn mean. You can set your watch by it. Well, unless you're too stupid to tell time. In that case, you can write for the Daily Mail. What is really ironic is that those screeching the loudest about the man threat are generally in the same camp as those who claim to have the solution. It almost always involves the idea that masculinity is defective and that the worship of women, also known as feminism, is the answer. But take a look at the Red Hearts Facebook page. They are linked in the low bar too. I went through a few posts earlier and stopped when they started moaning and pissing about Jessica Valenti quitting Twitter because her poor little feelings meter was spiking. First of all, good riddance, Jessica. Second of all, if I were a young man, confused, fatherless, looking for something better in life, and I stumbled on the Red Hearts campaign page, I'd head to the nearest revenge porn site on the double, figuring my odds would be better. That is the sad result, when all young men have left of them is to either bow and scrape in self-deprecation or find refuge in hostile resistance to it. The former is the most common choice. The latter is infinitely more healthy. That is why, even though I don't agree with what I saw posted from Bloke's advice, that I don't have any sneering condescension or lofty judgments to make. Call me crazy, but if your society is producing groups of men that hate women that number in the hundreds of thousands, you might want to take a much more nuanced and sophisticated look at why that is happening than standing on some simpleton notion like men is bad. That whole story is another telling example of how misogynists are made. It is not from men having power and privilege, but from having those very things lorded over them in a social climate that deems mistreatment of men perfectly acceptable. Feminists are now reaping what they've sown, and true to their interminably stupid style, they are blaming the crop they planted for springing leaves and bearing fruit. As they powerlessly wail into the increasingly expansive intellectual vacuum of the mainstream audience, it will do them little good. They are now forced to lay in the bed they made. They may be able to close down a Facebook group, but they can't do a thing about the fact that the backlash is here. As for me, it could not be easier to say how little I care. And that is it for another Talk from an Ear for Men. As always, I hope you've enjoyed, even if you haven't, and see you next time.